This is the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR Kutztown, and you are listening to the Golden Hour, your home for all things insights, discussions, recaps, and interviews about all things Kutztown sports. I am your host, Tommy Scuderi, and folks, Golden Bears may never lose again. I mean, that's not even really an understatement. Kutztown football again advances to 13-0. Well, not again, but they win again and advance to 13-0 on the year. They beat Assumption 56-19 in the second round of the NCAA Division II playoffs. They advance to the quarterfinals, which is also the Super Region Championship game, and they get Frostburg State coming to town on December the 6th. We'll talk all about them in just a little bit. Football will really be the highlight of today's show. Plenty to dive into with the Division II playoffs. 32 teams came into the frame, just 8 remain after the first 2 rounds. Kutztown and Frostburg State will play for the Super Region 1 championship. Ferris State and Minnesota State will play for the Super Region 3 championship. Albany State out of Georgia and Newberry will play for the Super Region 2 title. And Harding and UT Permian Basin will play for the Super Region 4 title. So a lot to dive into over the next hour here on the Golden Hour. I'm Tommy Scuderi again on the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR Kutztown. We're going to have open phone lines throughout the show if you want to talk anything. Kutztown sports, not even just football. We'll have some basketball to get into as well, and wrestling also getting going this week. Studio line is 610-683-4058. That's 610-683-4058 if you want to call in throughout the show, have a discussion there. But we'll start off with a recap of what happened last week. Well, not even last week, just a couple days ago on Saturday. Kutztown welcomed in Assumption, and I will give this as a caveat. This is a tough game for Assumption because they were without their not only their starting quarterback but without their backup quarterback as well. So I do think the score kind of reflected that a little bit in the sense that yes, Kutztown won handily, and it was mostly because of their offense. But it's very tough to compete against this Kutztown team with a third string quarterback for any team, let alone for Assumption, a team that with their starting quarterback opened up the season with a 51-14 loss at this same place against the same team on September the 4th. They came back to try and get some revenge in the playoffs on November the 29th, which was, of course, this past Saturday. Happy December, by the way, everybody. December 1st, current date. Just 2 days ago on ESPN Plus and, of course, on KUR. Assumption came to town and lost 56-19 to KU. We'll dive in to the box score and recap of that game right now. And this was really, I think, this was the Judd Novak statement game that we've gotten in bits and pieces throughout the year so far. Everyone knows that Judd Novak is a good quarterback. Everyone knows he is a good player. But I think what we really saw is just how dynamic he is and how versatile he is. Last week, he beat up Bentley with his arm, had a couple of huge deep bombs down the field. On Saturday, he did it with his legs. He had 3 rushing touchdowns, a couple from right around the goal line, and also a 78-yard dash that he took all the way to the house, right up the middle. Finished with 3 passing touchdowns, 3 rushing touchdowns, 6 total TDs on the day for Judd Novak as he distributed the ball well. Jaden Stewart had a rushing touchdown as well. He came back. He was out since that Bentley game. Went down earlier in the Bloomsburg game, I should say. Excuse me. So he went down early in the year with injury, missed some time, came back, and then went down again against Bloomsburg in the fourth quarter. Missed the PSAC title game and also the first round game. Came back for the second round game against Assumption, and on his second carry back, his first one went for, I believe it was 7 yards. The second carry went for 64 and a touchdown. Didn't have to do too much after that point as they work him back into the lineup. And I think that's what this rushing game had kind of been missing. It's still very good without Jaden Stewart. Guys like Steven Burkhardt, Judd Novak, Ben Martin III even getting in there, Craig Miller, who we'll talk about. They're very good running backs, and they're very capable, and I think they'll be a big part of this team in the future. But part of what makes the 1-2 punch between Steven Burkhardt and Jaden Stewart so dynamic is the fact that their running styles are so vastly different. Steven Burkhardt, while he's certainly capable of putting on some moves and working in the open field, he's more of a downhill running back, right? Um, he'll tell you himself, but think Cam Scadaboo. And that you think Cam Scadaboo, the Kutztown version of that is Steven Burkhardt. He'll tell you himself he loves that guy. Um, but he's more of a downhill guy. He's going to fight. He's going to get you the first down on 3rd and 4. You know what I'm saying? He's going to move the chains on first down. He's going to get 9. Whereas Jaden Stewart, he's going to bounce it outside and he can kill you with his speed. He has probably the fastest, I guess release would be the best way to describe it, of any running back I've seen at this level. I mean, he is just so quick. He is explosive. And he showed exactly why, despite, having 2 injuries to his right leg this year, he seems just as fast as ever. And they're going to need him down the stretch here. If this Kutztown team is serious about making a national title run, which why shouldn't they be, right? They're 13-0. They've beaten up pretty much everyone in their way with the exception of Bloomsburg, who they beat by 8, and IUP, who they beat by 5. Everyone else, they haven't even really stood a chance against this Kutztown team. I mean, let's just go through some of these scores here if you're unfamiliar with what the football team has been doing. They open up with a 51-14 win over Assumption on the road to Edinboro. Edinboro, a team that was in the hunt for the PSEC West title up until the last week. They actually won it. They just needed a little bit of help to get there. Ultimately, did not get it. But they beat them 34-0, shut them out on their own turf. 46-7 win over Gannon, a 49-10 win on the road at Shepherd, 49-0 victory over Shippensburg, 34-7 up at Lock Haven, 43-14 against Millersville, 41-7 against Westchester, 49-6 against East Stroudsburg. East Stroudsburg on November 1st came in and everyone's like, all right, Kutztown hasn't been tested all year long. This is going to be the game that tests them. No, it wasn't. It was actually the next week when they went on the road to Bloomsburg, our second road trip with KUR. We went out there. It was a bit of a nail biter towards the end. Kutztown never trailed, but Bloomsburg, I mean, they stayed in it. It was 35-27, the final score in that game. Came down to the final play, where I believe it was Noah Kenzie that came up with a pick to seal the game after Bloomsburg had 3rd and goal on their 30-yard line. They did need a touchdown and a 2-point conversion, but again, came down to the final play. And then against IUP in the PSAC title game, Kutztown won 28-23. That was the first time, November the 15th, that they trailed all season long. They trailed by 7 at 3 different intervals, or they trailed by 7 twice and then by 3 once at the half, and then came out, scored, and didn't trail again. Bentley, we're like, all right, we're in the playoffs now. Bentley, they won the NE10. They kind of stole a bid. Surely this will be a bit of a tight game. They're relatively healthy. Nope, 52-0. First postseason shutout in program history, largest margin of victory, most points scored in a postseason game until this week, where Kutztown topped their own record from just a week ago, put up 56, allowed 19. 7 of those points were garbage time points for Assumption. I mean, this team has just been remarkable. In my opinion, it's the best team that Kutztown has had. Again, you are listening to the Golden Hour here on KUR. I'm Tommy Scuderi here with you. If you want to call in and talk about anything we talk about throughout the show, the number is 610-683-4058. Again, that's 610-683-4058. That's a studio line here. But this is, in my opinion, I mean, since I've been here, I'm in my senior year. It's by far the best team I've seen. They were good in 2023. They made it to the semifinals, but I think they lost 2 games to start that game, and you kind of showed vulnerabilities going into that 23 game. They were certainly capable, but I think this is the most well-rounded. The special teams unit, in terms of kick returns and kickoffs, is pretty good. They leave a little bit to be desired in the field goal game. In my opinion, if you had to point to one weakness, I'd say it's probably their field goal kicking. Their defense, top 2 in the country. And the only reason they're not number 1 is because Harding is just so much better than they even were last year. Kutztown was the number 1 scoring defense last year. Now they're number 2. I think they're 3rd in total yards allowed per game. They're the 5th scoring offense in Division II, which is the first time that the offense has been ranked in that metric as far as I can remember in Division II. They had a really good defense last year, but their offense wasn't quite as explosive. They're explosive this year. They've done a really good job of putting all of the pieces together. And now we'll turn their attention to Frostburg State this week. We'll talk about that in just a tad. I want to clean up a little bit more about this Assumption game before we move on to that. You don't want to just burst by a 56-19 victory. But Jaden Stewart's back. Steven Burkhardt's doing his thing as always. He had a nice receiving touchdown. He caught it at the 10-yard line. Made a nice cut inside. Made a man miss. Took it across the goal line. Trevor Amorum had 2 touchdowns. One was a little more hard fought than the other. Craig Miller, third string. Honestly, Craig Miller started the year as the 5th running back on this roster. He's moved up with some injuries and roster changes as well. I would say he's probably 4th right now, potentially even 3rd going into this week. So he's really made a name for himself over the last couple of weeks. He had 2 touchdowns last week on goal line handoffs. This week he has a 25-yarder from a little bit further out. Jane Stewart, like we talked about, had a touchdown run. No Luke Maxwell. I think this might be the first week. I would have to look. This is the first week in a while that Luke Maxwell has not had a goal line touchdown. They didn't go to him. He did have a couple of third down pickups on third and short, which they typically go to him as the fullback. But this team, like, they can beat you in so many different ways. It's remarkable. It really is. Like the ways that Kutztown finds a way to win these, not finds a way, but the way they win these games. Like, it's never the same thing twice. It's never just, all right, we're going to air it out. We're going to go air raid and attack deep down the field, or we're just going to, throw it short and over the middle and just take what we can get, or we're just going to run the ball. It's always a combination of everything, which I think is what has given defenses so much trouble, is that there's not just one thing that this team can do to you. It's death by paper cuts, really, for this Kutztown team. They aren't penalized a ton. They're 3rd in the conference in penalties. They do have the occasional unnecessary roughness or roughing the kicker penalties like that. They really come on their special teams. That's been the main penalty component this year. But, I mean, other than that, there's not much you can really speak to in terms of, all right, where's a weakness on this team? But field goal kicking leaves a little bit to be desired. They have to get pretty close. And even then, you never truly know to kick these field goals. But that will do it for the assumption talk. Kutztown goes 2-0 against the Greyhounds this year. They go 1-0 once again, which, if you're unfamiliar, that's the mantra of this football team, is just go 1-0 every week, not look too far ahead. And we can do the looking ahead in terms of, semifinals and maybe a national championship and all that. They leave that to us to talk about. The team itself, the players, coaches, staff, they're always like, all right, let's just focus next week, because, I mean, if you lose next week, there is no further ambition, right? So, Frostburg State is the next team that will be trying to knock off KU. This is the first time that these two programs have ever met, Kutztown and Frostburg State. Frostburg State, champions of the Mountain East Conference, 11-2 in their season, 7-1 in conference play. Taking a peek at their schedule, they have a lot of times. I think the PSAC is the best conference in Super Region 1. I don't think there's any really arguing that. This is a team they've played some PSAC teams. They opened the year against Shepherd, beat them 41-27. Obviously, Shepherd, who they were at the beginning of the year and who they were at the end, were two different teams. And then Millersville, in a dogfight with Millersville in your second game of the season, 42-34. We saw what Millersville was all throughout the year. I think they got one. Did they even end up getting a win? I don't necessarily remember. Let me check. They might have been. They were still winless when they came to Kutztown week 6. Millersville basketball was no joke, but their football team leaves a little bit to be desired as of late. Let me double check that. They already have their schedule set for 2026, and they're not trying to let me see this 2025 record. Yeah, they went 0-11. Millersville did not win a game, was within one score of Frostburg State, which, if you're, bit of an indictment on Frostburg State. We'll see who else. I mean, they weren't even close in any of these other games. East Stroudsburg against a little bit of a battle, 41-25. This being Millersville we're going through now. Shepherd was a couple scores, yeah. But the fact that one of their closest games was Frostburg State, who ended up winning the Mountain East, the worst team in the PSAC. I don't know. Obviously, Frostburg has recovered from that. They beat Cal, another good PSAC team, last week, and they've done what they need to do. They went to triple overtime against Glenville State and Charleston and triple overtime. So they're an overtime team. They're familiar with it. They've been road warriors. Their last home game was November the 8th. Haven't been back home since, nearly a month now since they've been on the road. They won't go back again this season, in all likelihood. I guess you never know if they manage to beat Kutztown. They get some upsets elsewhere in the country. They could earn themselves a home game, but it's not likely for Frostburg State. They beat Johnson C. Smith 21-7 in the first round of the CIAA. Beat Cal 23-21 in really what was a very interesting game. Cal had a chance to win it with a field goal. They had second or third down. I was watching it simultaneously while we were doing the Kutztown game, so I don't have the exact. But I believe what happened was, actually I was getting text recaps here. They had the ball, I think on second or third down, did Cal, and they threw two passes rather than trying to run it. Didn't get any yardage, and then kicked the 45-yard field goal that was short by like a foot. So the thinking was, why would you not run a couple plays, try and get with maybe up to 40 yards or so, and then try your field goal there. Now, then Cal wins the game, and now they're coming to Kutztown. But so I think Frostburg, they got a little bit lucky at the end of the game. There was some poor coaches' decisions by California University of Pennsylvania down the stretch that ultimately cost them the football game. And Frostburg State will head to the Super Region 1 title game. They come here to take on KU on Saturday. We expect that to be a 12 o'clock kick. It's not officially updated on the KU website yet, but that's what the couple games have been. And Frostburg's website does say 12, so obviously those can change. But if I had to guess, that's going to be a noon kickoff from Frostburg, or from KU, taking on Frostburg, who has done some interesting things this year. They certainly have some ball players on their team. Their quarterback is a very talented individual, Jordan Brooks. He missed a couple games with injury. He has come back, and he's been the difference maker. He's thrown for 17 touchdowns, 6 interceptions for just over 2,000 yards. Miles Fulton was their backup that served them relatively well while Brooks was hurt. Tanner Puffier does a little bit of Wildcat for them as a Wildcat quarterback. So they're going to throw a little bit out to you. We'll learn a little bit more about them later in the week. I would encourage you, if you're really interested in this matchup, Kutztown versus Frostburg, check out d2football.com or D2Football on YouTube. They do breakdowns of every game across the country in the playoffs. So they'll have a detailed breakdown of this Frostburg and Kutztown matchup. I think Tuesday or Wednesday they usually do those. Keep an eye on that as well. And then also, make sure you listen to the game on KUR on Saturday. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 11:30. If the game is at noon, if it's at 1, we'll start at 12:30. So keep an eye on the socials for that when the game actually is going to take place. We'll have pregame coverage where we'll break down the matchup as well, and then we'll have live play-by-play all the rest of the way. As far as Kutztown goes, KUR is going. We've reached out to the powers that be at the university and secured travel arrangements should we need it to go anywhere that we may need to go for this playoffs. Kutztown hopes for 3 more games, counting this one against Frostburg. But a lot stands in the way before then. I do predict, if I had to guess, not to give any bulletin board material to the Bobcats of Frostburg State, I think this is going to be probably another close game for the Golden Bears. But I think Kutztown is just too much. Frostburg State defense is okay. They're like middle of the conference in an easier conference than the PSAC. I just think Kutztown has too much for them. If I had to guess a score, I would say like 42-21 would be my prediction as to what we would expect with Kutztown going to the national semifinals. But that's why I play games, right? You never know. Ultimately, a lot of exciting things happening, not only here, but around the country. As I do want to dive into the rest of the bracket now. Again, you're listening to The Golden Hour. I'm your host, Tommy Scuderi, here on the radio voice of Kutztown University. The KUR studio line, if you want to call in, give your thoughts on anything we talk about throughout the show, or really anything else in the sports world, it's 610-683-4058. Again, that is 610-683-4058. But looking around at the rest of the bracket, we previewed a little bit earlier. Ferris State, the number 1 team in the country. They were supposed to be tested against Ashland. They were down early 14-0, but They recovered well and won 56-24. They will head to the semifinals games and will host Minnesota State. A little bit of controversy with Minnesota State. People arguing that there was another team in the region that probably should have been in instead of them. Minnesota State, they get in. They take down the 2 seed Findlay. They take down the 3 seed UIndy 35-27 and now earn themselves a date with the number 1 seed in Super Region 3 in Ferris State, the defending national champions. And in my opinion, if you're a Kutztown fan, pray for Minnesota State in that game. And I'll explain why in just a moment. But the more upsets, the better, I think, for the Golden Bears. Harding takes on UT Permian Basin, which is another first-time matchup there between those squads. And then Albany State takes on Newberry. That'll be a good game in Super Region 4. I don't think, in my opinion, that doesn't affect Kutztown a ton. Who wins that? Obviously, every game at this point could potentially affect KU. But I'll explain why in just a second here when I talk about how the playoff brackets work. But if I had to guess, here is where we stand at the moment. Ferris is the number 1 team in the country. Harding is number 2. Every poll has them at that across D2, whether it's the American Football Coaches Association, whether it's the D2 Media poll, whether it's Flow Sports. Any poll that has polled these Division 2 teams has Ferris State, the defending national champions, at 1, Harding at 2, Kutztown at 3. Albany State and Newberry is up there as well. But that does not truly matter. Why does it not matter? Because let's say Kutztown beats Frostburg this week. Ferris beats Minnesota State, and Harding beats Permian Basin. No matter what, Kutztown, I guess you can maybe say if Ferris and Harding really play close games and Kutztown has another blowout, the committee might say, well, they had 3 straight playoff blowouts. They're deserving of a higher seed. I don't think that will happen, but it's possible. In all likelihood, Kutztown would be a 3 seed because once they get to the semifinals, the 4 teams that are left, they are reseeded. Because once you get out of your region, right, your regional seed and then your new national seed would be different. I think Kutztown would be the 3 seed, Ferris would be the 1, Harding would be the 2. It's possible Ferris and Harding swap, depending on performance. I think Harding is a better football team for what I've seen than Ferris. I think they're more complete. I think Ferris has shown more weaknesses than Harding has, but ultimately, when you're defending national champions and you haven't lost a game, you're going to be number 1 until you lose. So I don't necessarily see them getting bumped from that 1 seed in Ferris. So if I had to guess, right, excluding Albany and Newberry, if both Harding and Kutztown get out of their regions, which I do think they will, but you never know, it would be Kutztown going to Searcy, Arkansas to take on Harding as a 2 and 3 matchup. That is what I think will probably end up happening, and that is why we keep an eye on these other games, because that's important. Like, yes, in the sense that, like, it'd be cool to take a flight, right? It'd be cool to fly out to somewhere you haven't been. I know the players that I've talked to have been excited about the notion of potentially going somewhere cool. But at the same sense, Harding has been such a complete football team that you get them at home, like, that's tough. You're getting on a flight, you're going to Arkansas, where weather shouldn't be too much of a factor. It should be warmer down there. But that's not nothing. That's not insignificant to be going up to Harding in a semifinal game to try and take down what, in my opinion, is the actual best team in the country, even though they're number 2. The reason that they haven't moved is Ferris beat Harding pretty handily last year. But Ferris is quarterbacked by Trinidad Chambliss, who has been leading Ole Miss to the playoffs at the Division I level. So I think there was just a level of talent there that the Division II level had not seen in a while, that ultimately led to Harding getting picked apart there. And I think this Harding team is better, and I think this Ferris team is actually a little bit worse than last year, looking at what I look at. However, there is a potential for an upset. The reason that we hope one of these teams lose, right? You're most likely not getting both Ferris and Harding, although I think that would be significant, at least for me, because I would love to see a Kutztown National Championship, and as competitive as the players are, I think their best chance is if Ferris and Harding both lose and they get the winners of those games. I think they're much more beatable than the other two are. But let's say Ferris, right, gets upset by Minnesota State. Certainly possible. Ferris would now be out of it. Minnesota State would be the 3 seed, maybe the 4. It doesn't really matter. I imagine Albany, which was if Albany beats Newberry, and they were both ranked in their region or seeded in their region, I should say. I would imagine one of them would probably be the 3. So let's say Ferris loses in this hypothetical scenario this Saturday. That means Harding goes to the 1 seed, Kutztown is the 2 seed, Albany or Newberry is the 3 seed, and then Minnesota State is the 4 seed. That means Kutztown gets the winner of Albany State and Newberry, and that's at home. So now you get a home game in the semifinals against a team that, in my opinion, is not as good as Harding or Ferris. And then you're playing on your own turf with a chance to go to the national championship game in McKinney, Texas, in the week after. So that's kind of why you hope one of these teams go down. Ideally, I think the real like strategist hopes that both Harding and Ferris get upset because they are undisputed number 1 and number 2 team in the country. You can debate on which order that they deserve to be in, but without a doubt, they're the top 2 teams. It's not close. I think we only look at Kutztown football and we look at our region and our conference. And Kutztown, yes, by far, best team in the PSAC, best team in Super Region 1, in my opinion. But when you go down to Ferris and Harding, like, there's question marks as to whether or not Kutztown is better than those teams, right? Most people think not. And a lot of that is because when you look historically at Super Region 1 in the PSAC, very rarely do teams from SR1 get out of the semifinals. Which what that means is, yes, they cruise through and they win, or maybe they don't cruise through, but whatever team wins Super Region 1, they almost always lose to the champion of another Super Region. Historically. Teams have made it. Shepherd made it out of Super Region 1 in 2015. Right? Bloomsburg made it to the national title game in 2000. But other than that, it really doesn't happen. So that's why teams, or nationally, right, Kutztown is not looked at in the same light as teams like Ferris and Harding that make it to the national title game pretty significantly, even if it's not them, it's the regions they are in that kind of boosts the competitiveness. What I'm saying is, sorry, I'm having like a brain moment. What I'm saying is, if you play what is perceived as a weaker region, and historically is in Super Region 1, you are less likely to get the respect held up to other teams like Ferris and Harding that play in regions that historically make it to national title games and sometimes even win them. Harding won in 2022. Ferris won last year. That makes sense. That makes sense what I just said. So, what does that mean for KU? Does that mean that if they go on the road to Harding if they get past Frostburg, which you don't want to overlook Frostburg State, they're certainly capable of beating you. So you don't want to start planning the semifinals, right? But you keep an eye on these things. Does that mean if they fly to Harding that they lose? No. Kutztown is a very good football team. And in my opinion, right, I think Harding is better. Kutztown might actually match up better against Harding than against Ferris. Why, you may ask? Harding is a wishbone offense, which the fact that they've been as good as they are running the style of offense that they have is fantastic, which basically means they have tight ends on the field on either side. They have running backs, 2 or 3 running backs behind the quarterback, almost always under center, and they just run the ball. They run the ball every play. They run for 400 or 500 yards a game. They very rarely throw, and they just beat everyone by like 50 points because they have so many playmakers and big guys, and they're dynamic, and no one has figured out a way to stop them. There's so much option and confusion that teams are just not built for that level of physicality that Harding plays in. They do throw a little bit, but generally speaking, they put up 45 points a game, and they do it with an average of 455 rushing yards, just under 6,000. They'll clip 6,000 rushing yards in their game this week on the season. They have 5,919. That's absurd. That's remarkable. They only have 506 passing yards on the season. 2 passing touchdowns. They average 30 yards in the air game. They don't throw. However, when you look at Harding, they didn't win a national title in last year. Why? Because they ran into Ferris State. And Ferris State beat them 41-7, which was really the first loss they had all that year. And the reason that's significant is because Harding is not meant to play from behind. When they get down by a couple scores, like if you figure out their defense, which don't get me wrong, they're the best defense in the country, and that's why they're so good, because they never have to play from behind because they're never trailing, so they can just run the ball and control time of possession and just out physicality you all the way down the field, score. Their defense is going to force a 3 and out. They get the ball back and they do it again and again and again, and that is what we've seen. They're not built to play from behind. They need to control the ball. They need long time of possession, and they just wear you down, and they do it great. However, Kutztown, I think, out of any team that's left in the country, aside from maybe Ferris, who beat them last year, has the best chance to slow this type of offense down. Because their front four is so good. Their linebackers are really good. Their safeties, they're a little banged up at safety. They have good safeties and corners. Lee Coleman, Mike Fienne, Zach Perta. They're guys that are capable of stopping the run. And I would trust Jim Clemens and Eric Fargo and that staff to find a way. You're going to win at the line of scrimmage against Harding. That is how you win. And obviously, if Kutztown wins this week and so does Harding, and that's the matchup, we'll break that down in detail next week. But I'm just kind of previewing. If I had to guess, that's what the matchup's going to be. It's going to be Kutztown and Harding in the semifinals, based on what I've seen. But obviously, there's still games before we get there. But if you can win at the line of scrimmage, you have a chance of beating Harding. And we've shown with guys like Freddie Redder, guys like Kyrie Butler, Mikey Gray, Jason Fromite, Braden Pullman, Khalil Williams, just going down this defensive line. They are capable, I think, against anybody. And I think if any team left in the country has a chance to stop Harding, it's Kutztown. And they're probably going to meet them in the semifinals. Because I would imagine, no matter what, the committee wants to keep Ferris and Harding separate. If I had to guess, D2 wants them in the national title game. If I had to imagine, because that's your highest profile matchup. However, little old Kutztown, right, from Eastern PA, a national force right now. And they've been for the last couple years under Jim Clemens, despite not having anything really to speak of when you talk about facilities or things like that. So, to sum this up, right? Give me Harding. Now, obviously, right, when you look at like the best chances for a national championship, in my opinion, is you don't have to face Harding or Ferris State at all. Yeah, they go down to some lesser teams that maybe use everything that they have to take them down, and then they go to the semifinals, and you can kind of pick the pieces there and go to a national title game for the first time in your school's history. But that's likely not the way it's going to go. Be the best, you got to beat the best. You can't run from it. And I would imagine Kutztown is probably going to run into Harding. They could run into Ferris State, right? They could switch up the order of things a little bit, and now Kutztown goes up to Ferris, which I think Ferris is just, they're like Kutztown. They can score in so many different ways. I'd actually kind of prefer to see Harding, just because, the wishbone is so fascinating. I think Kutztown can stop it up front. But for Ferris, right, they're the number one team. They've looked rocky at points this year. They went to double overtime with like 5-5 Saginaw Valley. They've trailed in like the last 2 or 3 games we kept an eye on them. They've been down 2 or 3 scores multiple times. Now they always come back and rally and win big. But I think for Kutztown, if you can go to a team like Ferris State and you can punch them early, you get a quick start, you go up 2-3 scores, then it's just survive, right? Because you know Ferris is going to hit you back. But if you can get a big enough lead and just continue to play your style of game all the way down the stretch, rely on your roster depth and just hang on, Kutztown can beat a Ferris team as well. That's what I want to make clear here. I'm not just going to sit here and say these teams are just too good. Kutztown should be running from them. I don't think that's the case. But Kutztown can compete with these teams. I just think, like, we're so used to KU being, they're the favorites. Every game they play, how do you beat the top dog? When you get to the semifinals, all but likely, if they're taking on Ferris at Harding, they're the underdogs, which has not happened all season long, which maybe you look at that and you're like, who cares what they think? Or maybe it's a little motivation. Like, we're the underdogs this year. Like, we get to try a little something different. We get to be, counted out. And maybe that's the level of spark that a Kutztown team needs to take down one of these two. But, there's still a week to get there. It's Frostburg State after the win against Assumption. We can dive in a little bit more to that later. But firstly, If you missed Kutztown versus Assumption on Saturday, whether you're still home for Thanksgiving, you didn't listen on KUR, that's okay. I do forgive you. I did put together some highlights. So here is what you missed. It's about 8 minutes from that game. I actually have to go put more money in my parking meter. So I'm going to let this play. Here are all the highlights that you missed from Kutztown's 56-19 win over the Assumption Greyhounds. And it was an exciting one, folks. Buckle up. Trevor Morum goes in motion from left to right. So 2 right, 1 left. Tight end on the right side. Burkhardt still the running back. Novak out of the shotgun. Assumption bringing blitz. Novak has some time. Will fire at left side. Wide open. Grisell out to the 35. Brought down at the 30. Big time gain from Noah Grisilla. Worked that corner route to perfection. Sat down in the zone. A nice ball from Judd Novak. And Kutztown is now in Assumption territory for the first time today. A big pickup there. 3 receivers to the left. Camponius is heading on the right. Burkhardt will now set up as the lone receiver outright. So empty backfield for Novak. Novak's going to keep it himself on the quarterback draw. Up to the 5. Stutter steps in. He's in. Sheds off a tackle crossing the goal line. Judd Novak, the bruiser, across the goal line. And he's in for the first score of the game. A nice gain there on the first carry back for Jaden Stewart. Missed a couple weeks with injury. He's an explosive running back that they've really loved to have. Made it to the second team this year, all PSAC, and that was despite only playing 6 games. Caponia is a tight end on the right side. 2 receivers to the right, 1 to the left. Again, a handoff to Stewart. Working off the left tackle. Exploding ahead. Up to the 40, 30, 20, 10. Foot race. They won't get him. Jaden Stewart. There's not a better welcome back than that. All the way to the house, exploding his head forward to put Kutztown back on top by 2 scores. 3rd and 10. Patrick awaiting the snap, gets it. Kutztown sends 4. Pocket collapsing, works right. Keeping his eyes downfield, he's just going to tuck it and run, racing for the marker. Ball comes out along the near sideline. That's a fumble. It is scooped up by Freddie Redder, and he is going to be brought down at the 16. That's a live ball.
Yeah. Who's the one that knocked it out? Redder picked it up, but it's the
it might have been Braden Pullman again. What those? There's all kinds of carnage around that near sideline, but whoever it was got a hand to Josiah Patrick as he was stepping along the near sideline. Let's see who punched it out. That was Keshawn Jones. Burkhardt is the running back as Heinz will set up slot right. Burkhardt takes the handoff. Novak actually kept it himself on the option. No one within 10 yards as Novak scampers in for his second touchdown of the day. This one was a lot less physical than the first as there was no one around him. Novak kept it himself wide open. Just ran his way into the end zone on the left side. Perfect read option there. Perfect play call. Better execution. Robbins in the shotgun. Mancini goes in motion. Sets back up to the left. In the slot. Patrick dropping back. Kutztown coming after him. Left side to Smith. Broke it up. Lee Coleman in coverage. Right around the 45 on the out route. Tried to get it to Connor Smith on the jump ball, but Lee Coleman was there all the way. And Lee Coleman had a fantastic game last week. Had an interception, fumble return for a touchdown. He was all over the field and comes up with a big pass breakup there on 3rd down. 2 receivers to the left, 1 to the right. Tight end offset of the left tackle in the backfield. Cam Robbins is the running back to the right of Patrick. Patrick takes a snap. Play fake. Drops back. Fires. Intercepted along the sideline. All the way up to the 45, Pyle being pushed. Still on his feet. All the way up to midfield. This is a rugby sprawl. Flag comes in. Oh my goodness. Flags all over the place. That was the longest Pyle push I think I've ever seen. Who had the pick? I believe it was Brandon Strausser that came up with the ball. He's without a helmet as he heads to the sideline.
It gets Bear Den starting to get loud now. The Kutztown faithful now getting loud on the opposite side.
What a mess.
I mean, you get to watch that over, but that was just a great play there.
That was Brandon Strausser dropping into coverage out of that linebacker spot. He was met by pretty much everyone on both sides at the 45, and that pile was just pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed up to midfield before Strausser finally went down. 3 receivers right. Tight end on the left side. Burkhardt the running back. Tight end is Gino Campagna, more of a blocking tight end. He will set up off the left side of Ryan Chernecki. Winique Preston, Trevor Amorum, and then Grisilla, the receivers right. Grisilla goes in motion and will set up as the lone receiver on the left side. Play clock down to 2. Novak gets the snap off, dropping back. Fires in the flat.
Amorum, stiff arm 5, touchdown! Or did he step out? No, he's in! Trevor Amorum, shallow route, had some space, took it up and in. Kutztown is on the board once again, 27-3. They lead over Assumption. The kick is up and away. Preston will corral it in the end zone. He's going to take it out to the 20, exploding up to the 30, now the 40, to the 50, one man to beat, 30, 20, high-stepping 5, and falls out of bounds at the 5-yard line. They're going to spot him back at the 15, but what a return by Lanique Preston, who took one to the house earlier this year, almost did it again.
Wow.
Massimo Scambati with a terrific effort to bring Preston down, working around the block, and ultimately causing Lanique Preston to lose his balance and fall out of bounds. But what a return, screaming up the far sideline from Lanique Preston. Two receivers, tight right, one wide left. Stephen Burkhardt is the running back in the shotgun. Novak will drop back. Looking right side, out of the backfield, the Burkhardt at the 10. Steps inside to the 5 and crosses the plane. Touchdown, Stephen Burkhardt. Some nifty open field moves, makes a man miss. And just like that, Kutztown responds with 6 of their own. It is 34-12 with 4:48 remaining here in the third quarter. A chance to make it 35 here with Will Smith coming on to try the extra point. Minute 50 and ticking here in the third quarter. Kutztown on top 35-12 over Assumption. Second and 7 from the 22. Two receivers to either side. Burkhardt is to the left of Novak in the shotgun. Novak will keep it himself on the quarterback draw up to the 25. Works right, has some open space to the 45, 50, 40, 30, has blocker 20, steps to the right, 10, 5, touchdown! And he's gone the third time today that Judd Novak has rushed for a touchdown. He came into today with 2. He has 3 today.
I mean, what a run by Novak, and you gotta respect the blockers there. Tyree Heinsohn was the one to kind of cap off that run. I mean, it was closing in that safety on Novak, and Heinsohn gave a good block, and Novak just turned on the inside and put the burners
My
on.
goodness, 78 yards for Judd Novak. That's his longest rush of the season by about 40 yards. Empty backfield for Judd Novak. Priscilla Maxwell, the receivers, left. Lanique Preston, Amorum, and Brian are right. As Novak steps up in the pocket, he's just going to tuck it and run. Up to the 30. Steps inside to the 20. He's going to do it again. Up to the 15 before he's finally brought down. And Assumption has had no answer for the legs of Judd Novak here today. Another huge pickup on the ground. Wasn't a design quarterback keeper, but the pocket collapsed. Elected, I'm just going to tuck in and run. It's worked for me today, and it works again there. Kutztown in the red zone once again. 13:20 remaining in the game. Kutztown on top 42-12. First and 10 from the 16. Looking end zone. Novak wide open. Amorum in the back of the end zone. Touchdown, Kutztown. Trevor Amorum has his 5th of the season. Novak has another passing touchdown. That's his 2nd. Novak is by far probably today's MVP.
I mean, absolutely. I mean,
48-12.
3 scores for himself, and then just adding that one onto it is just a whole other thing.
Russo has Craig Miller in the gun to his right. Hands it. Miller explodes ahead up to the 20. Shakes off a tackle. Cuts inside 10. 5 Miller still going. Touchdown. What a run by Craig Miller.
Miller's dangerous. We haven't seen much of him.
We saw him last week, and the remark was he runs like he hates the turf. And I
agree.
I mean, he runs like he's just mad at the grass. And my God, he explodes ahead for another Kutztown touchdown, 55-12.
Assumption would score one more time. After that, Kutztown would kick the point for a final score of 56-19. Those were the highlights from the Golden Bear win this past Saturday. We'll have every game for you. Live play-by-play on the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR. As far as the Golden Bear football team goes, we'll be there the rest of the way. Guys, you want to give your thoughts on anything you've heard throughout this show or about anything Kutztown Athletics you want to give your 2 cents about? Studio line is 610-683-4058. Again, that's 610-683-4058. About 10 minutes or so left here on the Golden Hour as we go back to talking Division II football. I want to shift gears now to the Harlan Hill Award. So if you're unaware of what the Harlan Hill Award is, it's the best description I can give is it's the Division II Heisman Award. So the way it works is every year, 36 student athletes are nominated for the trophy. So it's eight from actually it's I don't know why it's 36. It should be for whatever reason Super Region 4 had 12. So it was 8 from each region except 14 for Super Region 4. So it should be 32. But this year it's 36. So it's usually 32. I think there were some tiebreakers or something. Anyway, basically every team nominates a player and then the sports information directors vote on the award after nominating their guys. So the initial 36 are placed on regional brackets, and then the top two players from each of, or top two from each of the four regions will advance to a national ballot, which will conclude today, actually. Uh, Today we'll finish up the voting from all the sports info directors after they nominate candidates. The reason why we talk about this, right, is because our very own Judd Novak was nominated in Super Region 1 for a Harlan Hill Award. He was nominated alongside Curtis Allen, Jamison Ashland, Leonard Farrow out of Fairmont State, J.J. Jordan from Slippery Rock, Jake Stanton from Assumption, Jack Orlovsky from Lock Haven, and Matthew Reevy from IUP were all nominated for this award. So two will advance. I think Judd Novak absolutely deserves to be one of the two when you look at his numbers. Not even when you look at his numbers, when you just watch him play, because his numbers, they really don't jump out at you as this remarkable, achievement. The only number that really jumps at you is that something I've avoided saying all season when I broadcast these football games, because I don't believe really in the announcer's jinx, but you don't like to test it. Novak has not thrown a pick all season long. He has 0 interceptions, which is one of the only quarterbacks in all Division II to do that. I mean, when you take a look here at I talked about he's the number 2 quarterback in all Division II in passing efficiency. So what that means is it's a lot of math that goes into it, but it essentially means he has a really high completion percentage. He averages a lot of yards per throw, and he doesn't throw picks. Is basically what makes up that metric. Kutztown also, by the way, is now the number 4 scoring offense in Division II, not number 5. They've officially moved over Central Washington after back-to-back 50 bombs. But you take a look here, and these are the most passing efficient quarterbacks. So these are some of the best quarterbacks in the country in terms of these metrics. So let's go through their stats. Gavin Supuk, the most efficient quarterback with a 195.62 passer efficiency rating. 41 passing touchdowns. That's remarkable. 7 picks. Novak is number 2 with 25 passing touchdowns, 0 picks. Number 3, 26 touchdowns, 7 picks. Number 4, 5 picks. Number 5, 4 picks. Number 6, 5 picks. Number 7, 6 picks. Matthew Reevy, 11 picks. Number 8, Wyatt Bauer, number 9, 4 picks. Alex Johnson, number 10, 10 picks. So you look through, none of these guys have 0 interceptions. The only one that's close is number 28, Ethan Hambley from Northwood, has 23 touchdowns, 1 interception. Everyone else has multiple interceptions. Ezekiel Harris from Southern Arkansas has 14 touchdowns, 2 picks. He's number 37. I mean, I'm scrolling through, and these are the most efficient passers in Division II. None of them have no picks. I don't know if there's not a perfect way to track it, but looking through, I don't know if there's a single starting quarterback who has played a significant amount. Obviously, if you like back up that's 3 snaps, probably doesn't have a pick. But I don't know if there's any quarterback that meets the minimum game requirement to appear on Division II stats. No, I just went through 119 quarterbacks and ranked them passing efficiency. All the ones that qualify for that, not a single one other than Judd Novak has no interceptions. I'm pretty sure he's the only quarterback in the country to do so. He's certainly the only one left standing in the playoffs. No picks. That's remarkable. I think it's a 68 completion percentage. He's completing 68% of his passes, and he doesn't throw interceptions. So I think he's absolutely deserving to be one of the final 2. I think Curtis Allen, everyone's talking about him as a lock. He's a running back with 2,400 rushing yards. So he's pretty much going to be nominated for Super Region 1 no matter what. So maybe it should be Jake Stanton, who won the NE10 MVP. Matthew Reevy, who has been nationally ranked in passing yards. I don't care. You throw 26 touchdowns, no interceptions, you deserve to be nominated. So I think Judd Novak will be one of the 2 representing Super Region 1. The Harlan Hill is announced on December 19th, the day before the national title game, as to who wins that award. I'm pretty sure there's a ceremony or like a conference somewhere in Texas. Actually, I want to double check that. where that usually is. Let's take a look. So it airs on ESPN in some regard. I'm looking at the YouTube from last year's announcement. And they take highlights from each player, talk about them. And then Zach Zebrowski was the 2024 winner. I don't think he was any. It doesn't seem like. Yeah, they used to do like a thing where they invited you out somewhere. But I don't think they do that anymore. So it used to be like you get on a plane and go somewhere cool. And. Because there was somewhere, I think it was Judd Novak. Someone was nominated in 23 and went somewhere. I forget exactly where. But they went somewhere. And we had an awards dinner. I'm blanking on what it is. It'll come back to me at some point and I'll talk about it. But basically, I think Novak deserves to be a finalist because he's so efficient. You know, he can do you damage with his legs. He can hurt you with his arm. He has such a command of the offense. He keeps you ahead of the sticks, and they don't punt much. Absolutely deserving of being a finalist there. But just a couple minutes left on our show here of the Golden Hour. Again, only one more edition. We'll most likely have a show next week. I got to check with finals and who's being on campus and all that. But if I imagine we're still going to do a show next week, especially if Kutztown wins, football wise. Then we'll have to talk about that and preview what the semifinal matchup will be. All very exciting. But Kutztown takes on Frostburg State in football this Saturday. We expect it to be a noon kick. Could potentially be a 1 kick if they have to negotiate some things like that. But if I have to guess, it's going to be a 12 o'clock kick, which means coverage will start right here at 11:30 on the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR. Also quickly preview some basketball before we send you on your way. I haven't talked about it much today because football being in the playoffs. However, Kutztown, the men's team, when we last talked, won big over Georgian Court, or won big over Penn State, Stucco, lost to Georgian Court 69-66 on the 22nd of November. They've been off since then. A tough battle on the road for the men's team. They're back in action, actually, against Frostburg State tonight at 7:30. That game will be on the PSAC Sports Digital Network. And then the women's team, they lost a tough matchup to Jefferson at home before having a break for Thanksgiving and having plenty of time to sit with that loss. They lost 58-40, and that was a game they just couldn't hit a three. I think they were 3 for 27 or something. They were 11% from beyond the arc. Not going to win many basketball games shooting like that. Coach Malief certainly knows it. She'll have that addressed tonight. They take on Wilmington, a Wilmington team that, I mean, in the kindest way possible, has not won a Division II, has not beat a Division II opponent in a year. They won all of last season. They won one game. They won 1-27, and that was against a Penn State affiliate school who is the equivalent of a D3. So they haven't beat a D2 team in quite some time. They went 7-99 overall since 2021. They're a really struggling program of the Wilmington Wildcats. They will come to Kutztown 0-5 to try and right the ship there. But for the Golden Bears women's team, it's a real good chance to right the ship here. A tough game against Jefferson, trying to re-get going here before turning your attention to conference play on Saturday. Both the men's and women's team will be in conference play against IUP at home on December the 6th. That's a 1 o'clock tip currently scheduled. There might be some moving around of those games depending on what happens with football in terms of staffing and everything like that game day and being able to actually accommodate the game if you're doing a playoff game the same day. But as of right now, those games are scheduled for 1 and 3, so definitely go out and support those guys if you can, both the men's and women's team, as they get started with conference play against IUP at home on Saturday. But both of them are in action tonight. Women's team starts at 5:30. Men's team will tip off at 7:30 here at the Keystone Arena. On the Golden Bear Sports Network is where you can track that game, or you can just go over to the Keystone Arena and watch in person. So that'll do it here for our coverage of Kutztown Sports here today on the Golden Hour. I've been Tommy Scuderi here with you. Appreciate you listening, as always, here on the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR Kutztown. We'll have one more show next week, most likely, and then that'll be it for winter break. Wish everyone the best of luck in their last week of classes, and then turning their attention to finals the week after. It's always a tough time for myself included. So best of luck. Always here every Monday, 2 o'clock. Of course, with the exception of winter break, where no one will be here, and I will not be here as well as often. Well, we might have some spot up shows here and there when the basketball schedule works that way out, and we have some things to talk about. But more than likely, it'll be this week, it'll be next week, and then we'll have to see in terms of coverage. But go Bears! Go Golden Bears football, go Golden Bears basketball. Wrestling starts this Friday as well, 7 o'clock. Make sure you get out there. But Kutztown and Frostburg State is the game to watch as they try and get back to the national semifinals with a chance to play for their first ever national title in program history. What an experience that would be. Go Bears! Now back to your regular programming here on the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR.